Overnight, one team quietly solved a problem that 3 others are still pretending doesn't exist. And if you're watching lap times of test period 2, day 1, you missed it. Because the story right now isn't speed, even though that's what everybody will tell you. It is understanding. So last week, test 1, day 1 was curiosity. Day 2 was correlation and day 3 was concern. Now, day 1 of test 2. Day 1 was about separation. And by the end of this episode, I'm going to show you why I think Ferrari may not be the fastest car in Bahrain, but they may already be the most race-ready package on the grid. So stick around to the end. Quick one. I just want to say thank you to everyone who has viewed, listened, liked, followed, and subscribed to this channel. Your support has been hugely positive to me and very motivating to want to keep doing this. We are a small channel and we're just trying to find a voice and audience amongst the mainstream. We at All Motorsports Podcast are about connecting with other F1 fans and creating a community that loves talking about F1. I do have one favour to ask you. If you do value what we are doing here at All Motorsports Podcast, please follow or subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. By doing this, you're going to continue to help us not only bring you our analysis of F1, but you're going to help us bring together a community of like-minded F1 fans. And that's what we're about here. Right, let's connect and talk about day 1 of test 2. Remember what we said on day 2 of test 1 last week. Operational readiness will beat peak speed in the first 5 races. I said that. Well, today confirmed it. Walk through the paddock mentally. Some garages, Williams, Aston, Martin, they're still removing bodywork between runs. Some still chasing setup deltas. Some still reconciling simulation. And then there are the teams running long stints like Alpine and Audi. Quietly though. 3 categories are now obvious. 1, teams still understanding their car. 2, teams trying to fix something. And then 3, teams refining something. Now, that third category, that's where championships begin. Now, if you listen to my last podcast, you know I am suggesting that Ferrari is the dark horse for 2026. And it's safe to say now the mainstream F1 media are starting to catch on. Last season, Ferrari were criticised relentlessly for lift and coast, managing energy, managing tyres, managing plank wear. Fans were frustrated, drivers were frustrated, and the commentators called it a flaw. But here's the uncomfortable question. If Ferrari spent 2025 managing energy and other teams spent 2025 chasing peak lap times, who is better conditioned for 2026? Because under these new regulations, energy discipline is central. Electrical deployment is going to be decisive throughout an entire race, and race distance control outweighs the qualifying aggression. Ferrari drivers lived that reality for an entire season last year. That isn't theory. That is going to be an instinct that these drivers have had built into them thanks to 2025. And now in Bahrain, what we're seeing Leclerc is calm. He's setting fast times. In fact, he set the 3rd fastest time overnight. Both drivers are being measured, and they are talking about execution and direction. They are not complaining about regulations. They are not talking about major issues with the car. Unlike Mercedes and Red Bull, Ferrari are not focused on just unlocking pace. They are following a clear plan and setting direction for 2026. Leclerc and Hamilton don't look like drivers searching for answers. They are simply refining things. Now contrast that with Mercedes. Last week, George Russell described Bahrain as a reality check. Now, agree, it's not panic language. It's more engineering language. It means, in my view, simulation and track behaviour are not fully aligned. So they're trying to correlate. And correlation on day 1 tells you they're still learning about the car. They're not slow by any means, which we didn't expect them to be. They're reconciling. So they're just testing to see whether or not the car is going to do what they believe it will do. Now, that's a very different stage of readiness to Ferrari, who appear to be building confidence rather than still building understanding. With the F1 Commission and the F1 Power Unit Advisory Committee agreeing overnight that, in their words, no immediate major regulatory changes were required at this point, one could say this is now playing into the hands of Mercedes, McLaren, and potentially Williams, who all use the same power unit. Yes, I know Alpine are using the same power unit, but I am sorry to say they are yet to show the same performance consistency as the others. Now, this decision has been put to bed for now. It will be interesting to see whether any teams are now willing to show their true performance, or will we have to wait and see in Melbourne. Then there's Aston Martin. Huge expectations around Adrian Newey. But when Lance Stroll admits they could be 4 to 5 seconds off, that's not fair. Although Fernando's comments post his testing today were a bit more positive. But it is an acknowledgement. A1 lap times showed some improvement, with Lance Stroll's fastest lap 2.5 seconds off the fastest time by George Russell, and Fernando 3 seconds behind. I cannot say, though, that Lawrence Stroll will be happy that he isn't getting a positive return on his investment at present. His constant presence at testing will also be placing additional pressure on the team to perform. And I definitely can't imagine he has much patience for underperformance. And Lance's comments publicly and whatever he's saying privately go a long way in influencing his father. However, it needs to be considered. If Newey's first interpretation of 2026 is taking time to unlock, that tells you something critical. This regulation set is more complex than anticipated, and complexity rewards preparation, which is where Aston Martin is behind the top teams. And it's not where Lawrence wants them to be. So the question is, how much patience does he have for continued underperformance? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Red Bull. Red Bull's messaging this week has been fascinating. They are setting good pace, but is it concern or is it disaster that they're talking about? Now, we've seen this from Red Bull before. They downplay their performance. This is nothing new for them. But what feels different this time isn't lap time positioning, it is the tone. Max Verstappen described the 2026 cars as feeling like Formula E on steroids. He said, as a pure driver, you want to drive flat out, and under these regulations, you simply can't. Now, let's be precise. That doesn't mean Red Bull are slow. It means the regulatory philosophy is different from the one Verstappen thrives in. The 2026 cars reward energy discipline, deployment timing, rhythm, throttle control. They must be managed, not attacked. Red Bull's dominance era was built on aggression, rotation, braking confidence, and driver authority. So, here's my balanced interpretation of that. If the new regulations slightly dampen aggressive front-end confidence, they don't eliminate Verstappen's skill, but they may shift where performance margin comes from. That's not disadvantage, that's adaptation. And adaptation speed matters this year. So, when Verstappen critiques the regulations, he may not be signalling weaknesses. He may be signalling that the driving philosophy has definitely shifted. And the teams that embrace that shift fastest, not fight against it, will benefit early. So, what will Max do? Let me know your thoughts. McLaren, last week calling for regulatory discussions before racing even begins. That was unusual. Teams don't publicly question rule behaviour unless something internally feels unsettled. Maybe they were concerned about safety. Maybe they were playing a political game with Mercedes. Maybe they weren't sure which way the FIA and F1 Commission would decide, so they competitively hedged their position. However, it seems overnight they changed their mind and are now well aligned with Mercedes. One can only assume they too will benefit from keeping the status quo with power units. Maybe. Looking at the grid landscape for the top teams, this is how I see it. Ferrari, well, as I've said, they're refining, and I think they're in a solid position right now. Mercedes, they're correlating still, but I think in days 2 and 3, they are going to now lock in and they are going to look at just refining. Red Bull seem to still be evaluating, but I think that day 2 and 3 will see them also refining. McLaren, well, now they're going to move from questioning to finally moving into refining. Although Lando didn't have the greatest day behind the wheel, especially compared to Oscar, and he is going to need to have a better day 2 and 3 if he is going to start to really understand this car. In comparison to the last few years, we don't really have a grid harmony at the moment. What we do have is a grid still adjusting to the complexity of the new regulations. So bringing it back to where I see the field at present, Ferrari's 2025 lift and coast was not strategy. It was constraint. But that constraint gave their drivers extended experience managing energy over race distance. Whether we like it or not, it is a benefit. That experience will definitely transfer cleanly into 2026. It doesn't make them faster. It makes them more comfortable earlier in the season. And early comfort in regulation reset seasons is highly valuable. Red Bull, they're not struggling. Mercedes, they're not panicking. And McLaren, they're no longer questioning. And the other teams, well, they're not doomed either. The grid is still adjusting. But in my opinion, Ferrari appear behaviourally aligned with demands of the new era, at least this year. Now, from my perspective, that is a subtle but very important distinction between the other teams. Ferrari may not be ahead when we look at the timesheets, but they are aligned with their strategy. And in a regulation reset season like 2026, alignment often beats aggression in the opening rounds. That's the pattern forming in Bahrain, not dominance, alignment. So here's the question. Is Verstappen's resistance a warning sign for Red Bull, or is it simply the growing pain of a champion adjusting to a new era? And are Ferrari ahead because they're quick or because they're ready? Let me know your thoughts. Put them in the comments below. And remember, if you want to help us bring you more of what matters, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, and or Apple. If Bahrain is teaching us anything, it's that the season may already be taking shape. I'm Nathan. Thank you for listening to the All Motorsports Podcast. See you again when we look at day 2.